Living together means splitting the bills. After years of distance, Karen suddenly insisted on moving in. Caught off guard by her abrupt demand, the usually calm Robert was furious and proposed they split the living expenses. But Karen retorted, "What? I am letting you spend time with adorable Emma, and you want to split? If that's how you feel, you'll never see Emma again." Little did anyone know the shocking truth behind Karen's bold statement. I'm Olivia, a 60-year-old housewife. Robert retired early but got rehired at 60. It's been 2 years, and he's still working. We have a daughter, Karen, but we have been estranged since she left home after high school. Even though we weren't close, she's still our precious child. We always wondered about her well-being, but no news meant good news, and we were content with our peaceful retirement. Then, out of the blue, she reached out to announce her marriage. It was a surprise, but knowing someone was there to look after the self-centered Karen was reassuring. However, 5 years passed, and we started drifting apart again. One day, Karen unexpectedly called. "You're 60 now, right, Mom? It must be tough, just the two of you." "Oh, we're not that old yet. But you're aging every day, right? So I decided to move in with you. What? We're moving next week. See you then." She hung up before I could respond. I tried calling back, but her phone was off. I then tried reaching out to her husband, Thas, but he didn't answer. Karen has always been stubborn and self-centered. She believed the world revolved around her. When things didn't go her way, she would throw tantrums. We even had neighbors called the police on her. Don't cause trouble to others. We tried disciplining her, but nothing worked. Before we knew it, she left home, and we lost touch until she announced her marriage. Since Thas wasn't a delinquent, he didn't know who to turn to for advice. And by the time he realized it, it was no longer possible to mend the distance between him and Karen had left the house. I didn't hear from her for several years until it was reported that she got married. We had no idea how she lived during those years. She got married, had a child, but as an adult, she was free to make choices. That seemed kind-hearted and more reasonable than Karen. We hoped marriage would change her, but it didn't. Even as a mother, Karen remained selfish. When Robert came home from work, I told him everything. He said, "Leave it to me." True to her word, Karen arrived the next week with Thas and Emma, bringing all their belongings. I could see that they had brought in their furniture and household items and were eager to stay. She declared, "I'm taking my old room for Emma," and started setting up. Emma seemed restless, and to make matters worse, Karen took over Robert's study. Furthermore, Karen takes over Robert's study without permission. "We'll use this room," she announced, instructing Thas to move Robert's things. Thas, ever the obedient husband, complied. If a family is harmonious, that's great, but this couple seemed more like a master-servant relationship than a loving pair. Then Robert stepped in. "You can use the room you were in before, but don't you dare touch my study. Get out now." He snatched the bags they were moving and kicked Karen and her husband out. "What's your problem? You're old and retired. You don't need a study." "How can you say that? Your father is still working. I have to keep working to make ends meet. I can't afford to feed you two for free. You'll pay half for the room, utilities, and food. If you're even a day late, you're out." "Excuse me? We are offering to take care of you in your old age, and you want us to pay? We should be charging you for our help. I'm not so frail that I need a foolish daughter like you to take care of me. If you're unhappy, leave. We'll get to live with adorable Emma. What's there to complain about? If you keep this up, you will never see Emma again." Emma was born 5 years ago, and we have hardly seen her since. Threatening to keep her away now doesn't mean much. So what? You think bringing up Emma will get you everything? That she's some precious bargaining chip? Robert's unexpected comeback left Karen speechless. It's not that we didn't have any affection for Emma. We wish Karen understood that. Since we hadn't been able to meet much before, using Emma as an example now was pointless. But Karen didn't get it. She seemed to shift her focus, accusing her own father of being a cold-hearted old man who couldn't love Emma. When asked about the real situation, Thas said the apartment they were moving to was going to be demolished due to its age. They were told to leave immediately, and it would be a big help if they could stay at Karen's parents' house. He admitted he felt pathetic, unable to afford moving expenses. Honestly, it's Karen's fault for being so self-centered and struggling financially. She probably had a spoiled life, so this outcome was expected. But young Emma had nothing to do with it. She's at an age where adults should protect her. With that thought, the idea of settling conditions without consideration seemed wrong. Interrupting the ongoing argument between Robert and Karen, I chimed in. I'll give you 1 month. Either move out and live as a family, or tree in a new place, or pay half the living expenses and live with Thas, as he suggests. Hey, you know how selfish Karen is, right? If we allow this, she'll definitely take advantage of us. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Trying to calm an outraged Robert, they decided on a 1-month trial of living together. Sure, as Robert said, if we showed leniency, Karen might cling like a leech and never let go. But showing a bit of understanding towards Karen might ease things. We decided to use this month to figure out Karen's intentions. Karen was a housewife and didn't work outside. Thomas left the house at a fixed time every morning and returned at a set time. It turned out that perhaps because Karen was a housewife, their 5-year-old grandchild had never been to a childcare center or preschool. When asked, Karen said, "It's a waste of money." Thomas doesn't earn much, but Thomas wasn't home on weekends. According to Karen, he was working a part-time night shift as a security guard. If you have time to laze around during the day, why not get a part-time job at the supermarket? I couldn't help but comment. You used to laze around at home watching Korean dramas. Why should I be the only one working? Karen snapped back. Thomas always seemed thin, but since they started living together, he seemed even thinner. Was this Karen's strategy to show a weakening Thomas and gain sympathy? Determined not to fall for such tactics, we decided to just watch from the sidelines. Then one day, Emma, playing alone in the living room, suddenly said, "Mom is waiting for Grandma and Grandpa to get wake." Confused, we asked, "What do you mean?" "Well, she wants them to go to a place called Heaven," Emma explained. Karen rushed out of the room, her eyes wide in shock, and quickly covered Emma's mouth, carrying her back into the room. From inside, voices could be heard with Karen telling Emma not to say unnecessary things and to watch a video and stay quiet. Emma seemed distracted by the promise of her favorite video. Karen emerged from the room acting as if nothing had happened. "Kids say the darndest things," she said. She probably picked up that line from TV or something. But would a child say something so specific without hearing it regularly? I don't think it's a word that comes out unless you hear it on a daily basis. I suspect Karen has been talking about our assets and how she can get her hands on them. Whether Thomas knows about it is unclear, but she seemed to discuss it openly in front of Emma. "Enough with the lame excuses. Explain yourself," I demanded. "Come on, Mom, don't look so scary. It's just something a kid said." "Don't take it seriously," Karen replied. "Well, just so you know, there is no inheritance waiting for you," I added. Karen's expression changed at those words, her eyes filled with resentment. Just then, Thomas came home. It was the weekend, and he wasn't supposed to be back because of his night shift. His unexpected return clearly startled Karen. Thomas confronted her, spilling the contents of a thick envelope. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded. I picked up one of the scattered items from the floor. It was a photo of Karen looking intimate with another man. "So, while I'm working nights, you leave our child alone to go out?" Thomas exclaimed. He explained that when they left their previous apartment, he had said goodbye to the landlord. The landlord had mentioned how living with Karen's parents would be good for Emma, which puzzled him. He later found out that Emma had been left alone at very late hours. Initially, he thought it was a one-time thing, but after moving in with Karen's parents, he noticed she was off and out during the day. Suspecting something, he hired a private investigator, resulting in the photos. "You left Emma alone while I was out for my yoga classes. I attend yoga classes once a week for my health and often go out for lunch and shopping afterward, returning home in the late afternoon," Karen confessed. The thought of Emma being left alone without lunch was heart-wrenching. "Missing one meal isn't a big deal, so while she was alone, you were dining on fancy French cuisine in a hotel?" Thomas pressed her about the affair, and I confronted her about neglecting Emma for her lover. Then Thomas revealed a shocking truth. She's after your assets, mother-in-law. She plans to dump Emma on you and go on lavish trips with her lover, he said. Karen retorted, You traitor! Who do you think you married? Being with a boring, straight-laced guy like you? Life is so dull. I need excitement in my life. According to Thomas's confession, Karen had passionately pursued their marriage. Aware of his own plainness, he tried his best to meet Karen's expectations. Whenever they were short on money, he took on part-time jobs. When she said she wanted to look good, he increased his night shifts. As a result, he was always working, rarely spending time at home or with Emma. Once, after being away for about half a month, Emma asked, Who are you, mister? She didn't recognize her own father, seeing him merely as the man who brought money. Still, Thomas obeyed Karen out of gratitude for marrying a man like him. However, the money he worked hard for was spent on lavish outings with her lover. She indulged in fine dining while not even providing a proper meal for Emma. He couldn't bear to see his child suffer for Karen's selfishness. I didn't care if I was abundant, he said. I decided to reveal everything for the sake of my child. I won't be discarded. I'll expose everything for the sake of our child. You are not the one being discarded, Karen retorted. You are leaving a foolish wife. Don't you dare call me a fool, Thomas snapped back. I have never neglected to feed a child, no matter how much I despise them. Wake up, I won't pretend I never despised Karen for her rebellious ways. Honestly, I did, deeply. But I never denied her food. To think my own daughter would... Thomas trailed off, unable to finish his sentence. Maybe it's impossible to get Karen back on the right track. Every time I tried to help, she seemed to stray further. Don't boss me around, Karen interjected. Aren't people in their 60s practically half dead? This house and land will be mine eventually. You might as well give it to me now. You said you had no inheritance to give, but selling this house and land would make money, right? Thomas pointed out. Oh, it's hopeless, he sighed. I realized wishing for Karen's rehabilitation was in vain. Robert, of course, heard about this and kicked Karen out with nothing, essentially disowning her. After being thrown out, she screamed about how all the branded items were hers, and that Thomas, who had nothing going for him but being earnest, should be grateful. She even used him. Thankfully, a neighbor reported her, and she was taken away by the police. It turned out the branded items Karen claimed were all bought with money she made Thomas earn, which she used when meeting her lover. Thomas stood his ground, not giving in. He not only divorced Karen, but also secured compensation and child support in the divorce settlement. Karen named her lover as her guarantor, but he quickly rejected her. Apparently, he coldly told her never to show her face again. He enjoyed affairs with married women and lost interest once they were no longer married. Someone else pushed Karen further to the edge. It was someone from the gambling place she frequented while splurging with her lover. Upon learning of her divorce, they demanded immediate payment of her accumulated debts. Even Karen realized she couldn't escape from these intimidating figures. It seems she's now working tirelessly, just as she had made Thomas do. Her life has hit rock bottom after the divorce. Thomas was freed from his torment, and his health improved. He transformed into a diligent and clean-cut father, passionate about parenting. He focused on his main job, prioritized time with Emma, and became a well-regarded father in the neighborhood. His relationship with Emma is great, and she often says she loves her dad. We as grandparents do our best to take care of Emma, and our relationship is strong. Robert is utterly smitten with Emma. Without her mother around, we want to ensure she never feels lonely and shower her with love. After getting rid of the selfish Karen, Emma started laughing more. Every time I hear Emma's laughter, I feel reassured that cutting ties with Karen was the right choice. Now, Karen is rarely a topic of conversation between us all. I wish for as a parent is for her to repay those she wronged and live a modest life. But deep down, Karen is still our child. I hope, while I'm still here, to reunite with a reformed Karen. A part of me still wishes for that.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.